There's no better place to be at 11 o'clock than Brownsbridge Transit. It is great to see each and every one of you. My name is Andy. If you're here for the first time, we want this place to be a place that you want to come back to week in and week out. Have you guys enjoyed this cold weather? Anybody? How about the days off with the cold weather? Fantastic. Well, hopefully it won't be this cold at Transit Weekend. Again, just want to make sure that you guys know, get registered tonight. It's going to be a blast, I can guarantee it. We are in week 2 of a series called Sticks and Stones, and we've been talking about this idea of bullying. And the truth is, if we kind of just thought about it ourselves, this series is really for those who have been bullied, those who are the bully, and those of us who just watch other people get bullied. And I truly believe that if we can grab hold of some of these things that we talk about, that it will change the trajectory of your life and maybe the trajectory of someone else's life. And so last week, my friend Chad, he got up here and he said this: bullies often get what they want. They get what they want through force, through making sure that their way is heard, but they never get what they need. And what do they mean by that is that there's something inside of them that is causing them to do this. And they aren't really receiving what they need in order to move past that or get on a better trajectory for their life. And so today we're going to continue this conversation. But before we kind of jump into that, I would love to tell you guys just a story from middle school, or when I was a middle schooler. But I'm such a visual person that I feel like you need to see what I looked like in middle school in order to fully understand the story. Okay, so here I am in 6th grade. I like to call this haircut the bloomin' onion, okay? Kind of looks like something that you could order off of the Outback menu. This, I'm not quite sure what's happening, but it happened, okay? Here I am in 7th grade. Okay, that's a pretty hurtful by your guys' responses. This is a clear depiction that your body and your face changed through middle school, okay? Because I'm about to hit you with a big one. How about 8th grade? Ladies. So painful. Looks like I ate Professor Snape. Speaking of Professor Snape, does it not look like I went to Hogwarts there? Every single picture. If you're curious, I was definitely a part of Gryffindor. Those of you in Slytherin, there's the door. But this was what I looked like in middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th. But the story I want to tell you specifically is when I looked just like this. 7th grade, everybody. Who's in 7th grade? Okay. What's so interesting was at 9 o'clock when I said that, all the 7th graders were perfectly in one corner. It made me laugh really hard. 7th grade, guys, it's the hardest year of middle school. Just want you to know that. I've been working with middle school. I've been a middle schooler in the early 1900s. But I just remember middle school, and especially 7th grade, is really difficult. So you guys are almost there. You're almost 8th graders, and you guys can move on in life. But when I was in 7th grade, there's one thing that I like to do. I loved playing video games. Anybody like playing video games? Yep. I had a video game system called a Sega Dreamcast, okay? Sega Dreamcast was for the poor people who could not afford PlayStations. 6 years later, after it came out, that's when I got it. My parents were like, this game is $3.99, so you can have it. I loved playing my Sega Dreamcast. So after school, I would get home, I'd play video games for a long time. After that, I'd eat some dinner, I'd watch TV for a whole bunch of hours. Then I would get ready for bed, go to bed, wake up the next day. I'm heading to school, and I get there, and the teacher, all of a sudden, Mr. Tyler, he was amazing. He looked at us and he said, all right, everybody, you're gonna go ahead and turn in your homework. And it was in that moment I realized, what homework? I had completely forgotten. First of all, I'd completely forgotten because I was busy doing other things. Second of all, I do not like math. Does anybody like math? Okay, a few of you. You guys can hang out with Ashlyn during Transit Weekend because she loves math and TI-84 calculators. Anyway, here's the thing. If you like math, that's great. Math has never made sense to me. I don't understand what a square root is. I don't actually want to know. Why would I use a compass? Not quite sure. I've never used that since being an adult. The only math I like is looking at my bank account with all those zeros behind it. Hey, there's not many zeros. It's very few. But that's the math that I like. So I never really wanted to pay attention, or I never really wanted to do math homework. So when the teacher, Mr. Tyler, had probably said, hey, you have homework tonight, I completely just ignored him. So I'm sitting in class. He says we're going to turn in at the end of the day. I'm sitting in class and I'm thinking, all right, who can I get to give me their homework that I can copy really quickly? And so I looked over. There's the smartest guy in the class. His name was Chris. And so Chris was kind of diagonal to me. And so I went, hey, Chris. He didn't hear me. I said, psst, Chris. No, he still didn't hear me. Then I did it again. Psst. Chris, sorry about that, ladies. I promise you I'm not sick. I spit a little bit is what it was. So I finally get Chris's attention. I said, hey, Chris, here's the thing. If I get a 0 in this, I'm probably going to fail the class. So I need you to do me a solid and pass over that homework that I can copy in order to turn it in so I don't fail this class. Chris looked straight at me and he said, no. I said, all right, well, I'm going to try again. Hey, Chris, I really would really appreciate if you gave me the answers to this or so that I can copy it so that I don't get a 0 and I don't fail this class. He looked at me again and said, I don't think so. Chris, I really need this homework in order to not fail this class. Please give me your answers. And so as I raised my voice, I guess I became intimidating. I don't know how that guy could become intimidating, but I did. And so Chris finally looked and he goes, fine, you can copy it. So he hands me over. I sit there during class. Have you guys ever done this? You can be honest. We're in church. He gave me the answers. I sit there in class. I copy them before we have to turn it in. Again, that was the teacher's mistake of not taking it up at the beginning, but he didn't. So I copied him. I put it down. One thing about math, you have to show your work. Okay, so I copy everything that he does, showing his work. I have no idea what the words, or not words, this math, the numbers on the page are doing, but I'm just going to copy it. So I copy it. We turn it in. We go on with our day, okay? The next day we get into class, and Mr. Tyler looks at me and Chris and says, hey, I need to talk to you guys after class. So I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, I don't know what this is about, but I'll see, because I'm not going to have an opportunity to just scoot away. So I walk up to his office. Chris walks, and he sits there, and he says, hey, so I'm looking at y'all's homework, and they are perfectly identical. And then the only way that you would ever make this mistake is if you were copying each other. So what in the world is happening? And so I had to look at Mr. Tyler and say, I copied Chris's homework. Chris was like, I told him I didn't want to give it to him. I didn't want to do that. I was like, quit ratting me out. But I sat there and I said, hey, I am the one who did this. I'm the one who made him give me his homework. And I copied it. He's like, well, it's obvious because no one would ever come to the conclusion that you guys came to the conclusion too. But I remember right then just feeling extremely terrible about myself because I had forcefully made Chris give me his homework. And he regrettably actually did it. And he missed one of those questions, and that's what made this entire thing fall. And I had to look at Chris, and I had to go back and say, Chris, I'm so sorry that I made you do that. I'm so sorry that I made you give me your answers. So I got a 0. Chris got a lecture of not letting people copy off of his homework, and the situation was over. And I felt bad because I intimidated him to give me exactly what I wanted versus what he wanted, and I felt terrible. Now, maybe you've done something like that, or maybe you've offended a sibling, a teammate, or a friend saying something that you didn't actually quite mean. I mean, we've all done that before, but why do we do that? I mean, in Chris's example, I think Chris was such a people pleaser that he wanted to make sure that I liked him by the end of it, and that's why he gave me his answers. Perhaps for some of you, you are making fun of someone so that you can get attention from the group of people that you are hanging out with. Maybe for some of you, it's as simple as wrestling away the video game controller from your little brother just simply because you are bigger than him. Whatever the situation is, we're sitting here today and we're just thinking that we just want a fresh start and want to move on after an argument, or I want to take this a little further, after just conflict in general. We just want to move on. It's in the past. I mean, why in the world would we bring it up now? Let's leave those moments and move on. It would just add drama back to the person. It would add drama to my life. It's going to be awkward. I don't want to bring it up again. And I would say all of us have felt that way at some point or another? And we aren't the first people to actually ever ask that question or want to scoop by something that maybe we have done. What's interesting is that Jesus addressed some of these people, this exact situation, with a group of people. And in Matthew wrote down exactly what Jesus said. And what's amazing about Matthew is he was a disciple of Jesus, so he followed Jesus around. He wrote down the things that he had said. He watched him. He is a first count of what Jesus was like and what he did. And he wrote it down so that you and I, thousands of years later, could understand who Jesus was and what he taught. So he looks at the crowd who's wondering the same thing that you and I are wondering, and he says this: therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you. I'm going to stop right there, okay? It's kind of interesting when it says, if you are offering your gift at the altar. Here's what that means. Making an offering or a gift sacrifice at the altar was encouraged in Mosaic law for having a connection with God. This was customary for centuries. Where Jesus was teaching, these people would regularly go to the temple. They would go to the altar as a matter of religious observance. It would be like you coming to church. But Jesus says there is a priority over this offering or priority over fellowship with God. He's basically like, hey, if you want to connect with God, there's something that you need to do first. And it says this: leave your gift there in front of the altar. First, go and be reconciled to them. Then come and offer your gift. You see, Jesus says that there's a priority over the offering. There's a priority over the fellowship with God, and that is to reconcile yourself to those that you have conflict with, to make an effort to restore peace in your relationships. You see, the thing that I love about this, or the picture that it gives me of God, is that he cares tremendously how we treat each other. He cares tremendously about our relationships with one another. And this is true not only by our actions, but also by our words and our feelings. You want to get right with God, or you want to really spend time with God, the first thing that you need to do is go and be reconciled to those who may have done you wrong, or maybe that you have done wrong. So over the last few minutes since we've been in here, is there a situation that you have been thinking about? And maybe it was an argument with a friend. Maybe it was conflict with your siblings. Maybe it was conflict with your parents or your guardians. What is that specific situation that maybe you are thinking of right now? This is exactly what Jesus was talking about. When he was talking to that crowd of people, he wanted each and every one of them to instantly think of someone that they need to go be reconciled with. So, what do? How do we actually do this? And so today, I'm going to show you an acronym, and it might be goofy, but I want to show you an acronym that maybe will help you remember that when you are in conflict with somebody or you have an argument with somebody, you can remember this and make the first step towards reconciliation. So the word is stop. S stands for this: say you're sorry. When anytime something happens, what if you just stopped and you say, hey, I regret that I did that. I regret that that happened. The second thing is this: T, take responsibility. What if you stopped and you just said, hey, it was my fault. I guarantee you, in the workplace, with your relationships for the rest of your life, if you can be the first person to look at somebody and say, hey, it's my fault, you are going to go far in life. O stands for this: offer to make it right. What can I do to make it up to you? Is there anything that I can do in order to make this right? And then P is promise it will never intentionally happen again. I'm going to do everything I can in my will to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Even though all of us kind of want to just leave things in the past and move on, and even though it might be awkward to bring it up 3 weeks later, 3 days later, 3 months later, 3 years later, I want you to know that according to what Jesus taught, now is the time to apologize. Now is the time to go and try to reconcile your relationships with one another. So, who do you need to apologize to? Is there somebody in the room that you need to actually go and say sorry, that when you guys are in school, you're just absolutely mean to them? Is there somebody that you need to go in your small group and just apologize to? I want to challenge you to do that today. That when I dismiss you to small group, stay in this room. Go apologize to somebody. Small group leaders will understand if you are late, but right now is the time to apologize. It's time to look at somebody and say, hey, I'm going to take responsibility for what I've done, and I'm sorry. I truly believe that this series, genuinely, if you can take hold of what we are talking about, it will change the trajectory of your life, the trajectory of your relationships, your friendships, your spouses, all of the different things. I promise you, if you take this seriously, things will get better. So, as you do go to small group, I do want you to think about this. Which would you rather do? Apologize to everyone you've ever cut in front of in a lunch line, or eat last for the next year? Let's pray. God, thank you so much for these students. Thank you for the message of encouraging us to reconcile ourselves to other people, to say that we're sorry, to ask for forgiveness, and ultimately, God, do what's best for the people that are around us. Father, I pray that some of these students would be bold enough to have those conversations today, that they would go and they would talk to the people that maybe they've wronged. Father, I pray in general of the idea of bullying, God, that if we are the bully, that you would convict us, that you would just allow us to know that you still love us. If we are being bullied, Lord, that we would rely on you. And Father, for those of us who, which I've done this my entire life, God, just stood aside and watched people be bullied, I pray that they would have boldness to stand up for those who are in need. So God, we are grateful for you and we love you. In Jesus' name, amen. You guys are dismissed to group.